The chamber was massive, carved from a single asteroid and polished until it gleamed like black glass. 12 stone seats formed a circle around the center platform, each one occupied by an alien representative. Some had scales, others had feathers, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. They all looked down at the small group of humans standing in the middle. Admiral Sarah Chen stood straight, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. Her hands were clasped behind her back, hiding the way they shook. Next to her, Dr. Marcus Webb kept adjusting his glasses, a nervous habit he could not break. Ambassador Kenji Nakamura stood between them, his face carefully blank. The Vraxian representative rose from his seat. His skin was purple and covered in bone plates that clicked together when he moved, his 4 eyes fixed on the humans below. Humanity. His voice boomed through the chamber, translated instantly into English by the devices in their ears. You stand accused of crimes against galactic peace. In less than 300 of your years, you went from burning coal to breaking the speed of light. This is not natural. This is dangerous, Sarah wanted to speak, but Kenji touched her arm gently. Not yet, the Vraxian continued. You have built weapons that frighten us. You have changed your own bodies with machines and chemicals. You have created thinking machines that could turn against all life. You spread across your systems like a disease, consuming resources without thought for tomorrow. That's not true, Marcus burst out. We've been careful. We've followed every guideline. Silence! Another representative stood up, this one covered in blue fur with far too many teeth. You followed our rules only because we watched you. The moment we looked away, you pushed boundaries. You tested weapons we banned. You experimented with forces you do not understand. Kenji finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. We are a young species. Yes, we grow quickly. Yes, we are curious. But we have never attacked another species. We have never broken our treaties. We have been good neighbors. The Vraxian's laugh was like rocks grinding together. You are too dangerous to be neighbors. We, the Galactic Council, have made our decision. We cannot allow you to remain here, where you might threaten the peace that has lasted for 8,000 years. Sarah felt her stomach drop. What are you saying? Humanity is hereby exiled. You will take all your people and move to the Perseus Arm, beyond the edge of Council space. You have 1 year to evacuate all human colonies. You will be given 50 years of supplies. After that, you are on your own. But that region is almost empty. Marcus stepped forward, his face red. There are barely any habitable planets there. The stars are spread too far apart. You're sending us to die slowly. We are being merciful, the blue-furred alien said. We could have voted for extinction. Many of us wanted to. Instead, we give you a chance to survive, far from those you might harm. Kenji's voice was ice. And if we refuse? Every alien in the chamber stared at them. The answer was clear without words. Refuse, and humanity would be erased from the galaxy. Furthermore, the Vraxian added, all records of Earth's location will be deleted from Council databases. The jump routes to your home system will be sealed. If any human ship attempts to return to Council space, it will be destroyed without warning. You are not just exiled. You are being erased. Sarah found her voice again. History will remember this. You're making a mistake. History is written by those who survive, the Vraxian said. In 200 years, no one will remember humanity at all. You will be a cautionary tale we tell children about species that grew too fast and burned too bright. The chamber's lights dimmed, signaling the end of the trial. Guards appeared at the edges, waiting to escort the humans out. As they walked toward the exit, Kenji spoke quietly, just loud enough for his companions to hear. They will regret this. Sarah looked at him. Despite everything, he was smiling slightly. How can you smile right now? Marcus whispered. Because they just made a fatal mistake, Kenji replied. They think sending us away will make us weak. They think hardship will break us. They don't know humans very well. What do you mean? Humans are at our best when we're cornered. When we're told we can't do something. When everyone counts us out. Kenji's smile grew wider. They gave us 50 years of supplies in a region of space with no rules. No council watching over our shoulders. No treaties limiting our research. They gave us exactly what we needed. To do what? Sarah asked. To become something they'll wish they'd destroyed when they had the chance. The doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. In the chamber, the council representatives began discussing the next item on their agenda. Humanity was already forgotten. But in the hallway, 3 humans walked with their heads high. They had a year to evacuate 8 billion people. They had supplies for 50 years. And they had something the Council had taken for granted and lost over their thousands of years of peace. They had hunger. They had anger. They had the desperate need to prove everyone wrong. The exile had begun, but so had something else. Something that would take 300 years to grow, hidden in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge. The Council had made their judgment. They thought they had ended a threat. Instead, they had created an empire. The first winter on New Terra killed 3,000 people. The planet was technically habitable. It had oxygen, water, and land. But the temperatures dropped to -40 degrees at night, and the soil was so poor that crops withered before they could grow. The prefabricated shelters from Earth worked for a while. Then the seals began to fail. People froze in their sleep. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center, staring at reports she wished she could ignore. Food riots in Sector 7, equipment failures in the mining colonies, a transport ship lost somewhere between the second and third planets. 8 billion people scattered across 12 barely livable worlds, and she was supposed to keep them all alive. "We need to ration the emergency supplies more carefully," Dr. Webb said, looking older than his 50 years. Deep lines cut across his face, and his hair had gone completely white. "If we stretch them, we might last 70 years instead of 50. "And then what?" Sarah asked. "We die slowly instead of quickly." Marcus had no answer. Ambassador Nakamura had died 3 years into the exile, his heart giving out during a supply inspection. His last words were still pinned to Sarah's wall. "Make them remember us." She touched the note every morning, drawing strength from it. But 5 years became 10, and 10 became 20. The death toll climbed. Some people gave up, refusing to eat, refusing to work. Others turned violent, stealing from supply depots or attacking neighbors. The dream of survival seemed to slip further away each day. Then came the discovery that changed everything. A mining crew on the 6th planet was drilling deeper than usual, chasing a sensor reading that made no sense. Their equipment kept showing power sources that should not exist. When they broke through into a cave system 3 kilometers down, they found it. Dark matter. But not like anything science had predicted. It flowed like water through crystalline veins in the rock, pulsing with a deep purple light. When they brought a sample to the surface, it powered their entire facility for a month. One small crystal no bigger than a fist. Marcus called it a miracle. Sarah called it their lifeline. The miners called it salvation. Within a year, every world in human space had teams drilling deep, searching for more veins. They found them everywhere in the Perseus Arm, these rivers of impossible energy. The Council had called this region barren and worthless. They had never looked below the surface. Sarah allowed herself to feel hope for the first time in decades. The dark matter changed everything. Power was no longer an issue. Heat became abundant. With unlimited energy, they could grow food in underground farms lit by artificial suns. They could melt ice on frozen moons and create oceans. They could terraform worlds that should have been impossible to settle. But Marcus saw something else in the dark matter. He gathered his best scientists and locked themselves in a laboratory for 6 months. When they emerged, they looked exhausted but excited. "We can do more than just power our lights," Marcus announced at the council meeting. "This energy can fold space. It can extend human lifespans by slowing cellular decay. It can power weapons that would make the council's military look like children with sticks." Sarah leaned forward. "Show me." The first test ships powered by dark matter cores moved faster than anything humanity had ever built. They could cross a solar system in hours instead of days. Jump drives that used to need a day to recharge now took minutes. The Perseus Arm, once impossibly vast, suddenly felt smaller. "We need more people," Sarah said during a meeting with the colonial governors. 8 billion isn't enough to hold this much space." The solution came from an unexpected place. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a geneticist who had been working quietly on the farming problem, presented her research. "We've extended lifespans to nearly 200 years. We've created artificial wombs that can gestate children faster and safer than natural birth. If we combine these technology, how fast can we grow?" Sarah asked. "In 30 years, we could have 50 billion people. In a century, 200 billion. The other governors looked shocked, but Sarah nodded. "Do it, we were sent here to die. Instead, we're going to multiply." The culture began to change. Children born in exile knew nothing of Earth except stories. To them, New Terra was home. The frozen wastes and underground cities were normal. They grew up harder than their parents, more adapted to survival. Schools taught engineering before literature. Every child learned to fix a life support system before they turned 10. Every teenager could pilot a ship, mine ore, or repair a shelter seal. There was no room for weakness, no time for anything that did not help survival. Remember Earth, reclaim tomorrow became the motto written on every wall, taught in every classroom, whispered in every prayer. The old world was not forgotten, but it was the future that mattered now. By the year 2350, 100 years after the exile, humanity had changed. They numbered 50 billion, spread across 200 star systems. Their ships moved faster than anything the Council could build. Their technology had advanced in ways that isolation and desperation had forced. Lisa Chen, Sarah's granddaughter, and now an admiral herself, stood on the bridge of humanity's largest ship. She had never seen Earth. She had never met an alien. All she knew was the empire her grandmother had built from nothing. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we've detected another dark matter vein. This one larger than any we've found before. It's in the next spiral arm over." Lisa smiled. The Perseus arm was just the beginning. The galaxy was so much larger than the Council knew. And humans were no longer the frightened species begging for mercy. They were something new. Something harder. Something dangerous, and they were very, very hungry for more. The probe drifted through space, no bigger than a human fist. It looked like a piece of debris, just another rock tumbling through the void. That was the point. Inside its tiny shell, quantum processors mapped everything. Star positions, gravity wells, radio signals, ship movements. It recorded the location of every Council patrol route, every military station, every populated world. Then it split, creating two copies of itself from gathered matter. Those copies split again, and again. Within 10 years, 1 million probes had spread throughout the galaxy, invisible and patient. They sent their data back to human space through quantum entanglement, a communication method the Council had theorized but never achieved. The signals could not be intercepted because they did not travel. They simply existed in two places at once. Humanity watched the galaxy that had forgotten them, and the galaxy had no idea it was being watched. Admiral Lisa Chen studied the data flowing across her screens. 200 years had passed since the exile. The Council thought humanity was dead. Their history books mentioned humans as a cautionary tale, a species that grew too fast and collapsed in the barren regions of the Perseus arm. "Let them think that," Lisa said to her command staff. "Let them feel safe." Commander James Park, her tactical officer, brought up a map. "We've confirmed 17 subspace corridors leading from the Perseus arm to other regions. 3 of them open into Council space. The others lead to unexplored areas. Show me the unexplored areas." The map shifted, showing vast stretches of stars that had never appeared on Council charts. Thousands of systems untouched and unclaimed. "There's something else," James added. He looked uncomfortable. "One of our probes found ruins. Ancient structures on a dead world in the Carina sector. The architecture doesn't match any Council species." Lisa leaned closer. "How old?" "At least 50,000 years. Maybe more, and they're not natural." The first expedition reached the ruins 6 months later. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, head of the Void Engineers, led the research team. What they found made her hands shake as she wrote her report. The structures were massive, built by machines for machines. Artificial intelligence that had existed long before any organic species reached the stars. The Remnant, as humans began calling them, had built an empire that spanned galaxies. Then something had destroyed them, leaving only empty cities and dormant technology. But some of that technology still worked. Yuki stood in front of a wall covered in symbols that shifted and changed. After 3 months of study, she finally understood how to interface with it. When she touched the panel, information flooded into her mind. Weapons, shields, power sources, manufacturing systems, all of it more advanced than anything humanity had dreamed possible. "This is dangerous," one of her assistants said. "We don't know what destroyed them. What if we activate something we can't control?" Yuki thought about the Council, sitting comfortable in their space, convinced they were the masters of the galaxy. She thought about humanity, still punished for daring to grow and learn. "We study it carefully," she decided, "but we study it. They gave us one advantage when they exiled us. No one is watching. No one is limiting what we can research. Let's use that." The technology took decades to understand and centuries to properly implement. But humans had time. They had patience born from 100 years of hardship. They had the hunger of a species that refused to die. By 2550, the Terran sovereignty had changed in ways the Council could never imagine. Human ships could phase through solid matter using shield technology, reverse-engineered from the remnant. Their weapons fired concentrated dark matter that could tear apart molecules. Their reactors generated more power in a day than some Council worlds used in a year. Population had exploded. 500 billion humans now lived in 2,000 star systems. Entire planets had been terraformed from lifeless rocks into gardens. Dyson swarms surrounded 50 stars, drinking their energy and converting it to usable power. But the greatest achievement was the silence. Not a single human had entered Council space in 300 years. Not one radio signal had been broadcast where the Council could detect it. Every ship ran dark, every colony was hidden, every communication was quantum-locked. To the rest of the galaxy, humanity was a ghost story, a species that had tried to fly too close to the sun and burned away to nothing. Admiral Chen IV, great-great-grandson of Sarah Chen, stood on the bridge of the flagship Remembrance. He was 50 years old but looked 25, his aging slowed by treatments developed from dark matter research. He would live another 150 years, barring accidents, sir, his intelligence officer reported. The probes detected a new species entering Council space. They call themselves the Swarm. Initial analysis suggests they're hostile. Chen pulled up the data. The Swarm were unlike anything in Council records. They moved like locusts, consuming resources and leaving dead worlds behind. They reproduced fast and seemed to have no interest in communication. Are they a threat to us? Not immediately. They're focused on Council space. But if they keep spreading... The officer trailed off. Chen understood. Eventually, the Swarm would reach human space. Better to deal with them when they were someone else's problem. Continue monitoring. But take no action. We stay hidden. Yes, sir. Chen dismissed his staff and stood alone on the bridge looking out at the stars. Humanity had survived exile by becoming invisible. They had thrived by being forgotten. Now they commanded an empire larger than the Council itself, and no one knew they existed. The question that kept him awake at night was simple but heavy. How long could they stay hidden? How long should they? Somewhere in Council space, the Swarm was spreading. Somewhere out there, the species that had banished humanity were facing a threat they might not survive. The probes sent back images of destroyed worlds and desperate battles. Part of Chen wanted to watch them burn. His great-great-grandmother's journal spoke of the pain of exile, the deaths in those first terrible years. The Council had sentenced humanity to slow extinction. Why should humans care if they faced the same fate? But another part of him, the part that remembered Sarah Chen's final entry in her journal, whispered different words. We survived not to become them, but to prove we were better than they feared. Chen closed his eyes and made a decision. Not yet, they would watch. They would wait. They would learn. And when the time came when humanity finally revealed itself again, it would be on their terms, not as exiles begging to return, not as victims seeking mercy, but as an empire that had conquered the darkness and emerged stronger than anyone thought possible. The galaxy would learn that banishing humanity was not an ending. It was a beginning. The Council chamber looked the same as it had 400 years ago. The same 12 stone seats arranged in a circle, though some of the faces had changed as representatives aged and were replaced. The Vraxian seat was now occupied by Kalos, great-grandson of the representative who had sentenced humanity to exile, but the confidence in the room had died. 73 worlds, Kalos said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. 73 Council worlds have fallen to the Swarm in just 5 years. That's more than we lost in the last 1,000 years of territorial disputes combined. The blue-furred Kellian representative, Ambassador Threx, slammed her clawed hand on the armrest. We have the largest military in the galaxy. How are we losing to these parasites? Because our military was designed to maintain peace, not fight a war, the crystalline Sovar representative said, his voice chiming like bells. We have not fought a real war in 800 years. Our ships are slow. Our weapons are outdated. Our soldiers have never seen real combat. The Swarm fights differently than we do, added the reptilian Drask representative. They don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They just consume and multiply. Every world they take gives them more resources to create more Swarm, Threx growled. Then we adapt. We build better ships. We create new weapons. With what? Kilos asked. Our manufacturing is centralized. Half our shipyards have been destroyed. The species that specialized in weapons research were among the first to fall. We limited military development for centuries because we wanted peace. Now we're paying the price. The room fell silent. The truth hung in the air like poison. The council had grown comfortable. They had believed their own propaganda about enlightenment and cooperation. They had forgotten that the galaxy could be dangerous. Meanwhile, on the outer edges of council space, a small refugee ship limped through the void. The vessel had once been a passenger liner, designed to carry tourists between peaceful worlds. Now it was packed with survivors, its hull patched with whatever materials the crew could find. Captain Vera, a young Kellian who had never expected to see war, stared at the navigation screens. We need to find somewhere safe, somewhere the swarm hasn't reached. Her navigator, an old Vraxian named Thomas, studied their options. Most of council space is either occupied or under siege. If we go deeper into the core worlds, we'll just be trapped when the swarm gets there. But if we go outward, there's nothing outward, Vera said. Just empty space and dead zones. Not quite nothing, Thomas said quietly. He pulled up a very old star chart, one from the historical archives. 400 years ago, humanity was exiled to the Perseus Arm. These coordinates were sealed and deleted from most databases. But I'm old enough to remember the stories. Vera looked at him like he was crazy. Humanity has been extinct for centuries. Everyone knows that, do we? Or did we just stop checking because it was convenient to forget them? She wanted to argue, but her ship had 50,000 people on board, many of them injured. Food was running low. The swarm was 3 jumps behind them. They needed somewhere to go, and everywhere in council space was becoming a death trap. Fine, she decided. We follow your old coordinates. But if there's nothing there, we'll have wasted fuel we can't replace. The jump took them 2 weeks, moving through space that no council ship had traveled in 4 centuries. The chart showed empty systems with poor resources, the kind of place where a species would struggle to survive. On the 4th day of the 2nd week, their sensors picked up something impossible. Captain, the sensor officer said, his voice shaking, I'm reading power signatures. Hundreds of them. And structures, stations, ships. Show me. The main screen lit up with an image that made no sense. A planet that should have been a frozen rock was covered in lights. Cities stretched across continents. Orbital stations formed rings around the equator. Ships moved in organized patterns, their designs unlike anything in council databases. Who are they? Vera whispered. The communications array crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, though with an accent Vera had never heard before. Unidentified vessel. You have entered Terran sovereignty space. State your identification and purpose, Terran. The word meant nothing to most of her crew, but Thomas's eyes went wide. Respond, Vera ordered. This is the refugee ship Bright Hope from council space. We are fleeing the swarm, we mean no harm. We're just looking for somewhere safe. Silence for a long moment. Then the voice returned. You are from council space? Yes, please, we have civilians on board. Children, injured, we just need somewhere to... Stand by for escort. Do not deviate from your current course. Do not power weapons. Any hostile action will result in your immediate destruction. 3 ships appeared on their sensors, moving faster than should be possible. They took up positions around the Bright Hope, their weapons clearly visible but not activated. Follow us, the lead ship commanded. They were brought to a massive station orbiting the planet. As they approached, Vera saw its scale. This single station was larger than some council worlds. How had humanity built this? How had they survived? When they docked, armed guards met them. But these guards also brought medical teams, food, and temporary shelter. The refugees were processed, given water and warm places to sleep. No one was turned away. Vera was brought to a conference room where she met Commander Sarah Okonkwo, the station administrator. The commander was tall, with dark skin and eyes that seemed to see everything. You're refugees from the swarm, Okonkwo said. It was not a question. Yes, we've lost everything. When I heard old stories about humanity being exiled here, I thought maybe... Vera trailed off. I didn't actually believe anyone would be here. The council said you all died centuries ago. Okonkwo smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. The council thought wrong about a lot of things. Tell me about this swarm. Tell me everything. Over the next hours, Vera explained. The swarm's tactics, their reproduction, their apparent immunity to most council weapons. The fall of world after world. The Council's growing desperation. How bad is it? Okonkwo asked. In 5 years, they've taken a quarter of Council space. At this rate, the core worlds will fall within 20 years, maybe less. Okonkwo stood and walked to a window overlooking the planet below. Farah could see cities spreading to the horizon, lights twinkling like stars. The Council banished us to die, Okonkwo said quietly. They erased us from history. They thought we were too dangerous, too unpredictable. They wanted us gone. She turned back to Vera. Why should we care if they face extinction now? Vera had no answer. She understood the anger. If their positions were reversed, would the Council help humanity? But Okonkwo continued. However, there are children dying in Council space. Innocent people who had nothing to do with what happened 400 years ago. We're not like the Council. We don't forget our humanity just because times are hard. What are you saying? I'm saying your people can stay here safely, while we discuss this situation with our leadership. The swarm won't reach this sector for years, if ever. You're protected now. And the Council, Okonkwo's smile was sharp, will be watching. The debate in the Terran Sovereignty Senate lasted for 3 weeks. 2 trillion citizens across 2,000 systems watched the proceedings, their votes counting in real time through quantum networks. The question was simple, but explosive. Should humanity help the Council that had condemned them to death? Admiral James Chen stood before the assembled representatives, his uniform bearing the medals of 4 generations of military service. The Council is facing extinction. Their military cannot stop the swarm. If we do nothing, billions of innocent people will die. Senator Kavita Sharma, representing the outer colonies, stood in opposition. My grandmother died in the first winter on New Terra because the Council sent us here with inadequate supplies. My parents grew up in underground shelters eating processed protein that barely kept them alive. You're asking me to forget that? I'm not asking you to forget, Chen replied. I'm asking you to be better than they were. Why? Another senator shouted from the back. They wouldn't help us. They didn't help us. They celebrated when they thought we died. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some wanted revenge, to watch the Council burn as humanity had nearly burned. Others spoke of morality, of not becoming the monsters the Council had feared. Still others discussed practicality. If the swarm consumed Council space, humanity would be next. Finally, Chancellor Maria Alvarez, elected leader of the sovereignty, raised her hand for silence. We will vote, she said. But first, let me remind everyone who we are. We are not the Council. We survived because we refused to become like them. Because we valued life over comfort, progress over tradition, and unity over division. If we let innocents die because of what their ancestors did, then we are no better than those who exiled us. The vote took 2 days to tally across all systems. When the results came in, the decision was clear. Humanity would intervene, but on their terms. 2 weeks later, the swarm reached Vraxia Prime, homeworld of the species that had led humanity's exile. The planet's defenses were formidable, built up over 800 years of peace. But formidable meant nothing against the swarm. Kilos stood in the planetary command center, watching his world die in real time. The swarm ships blackened the sky. Landing pods fell like rain, each one releasing thousands of parasites that burrowed into the ground and began consuming. The defense fleet fought bravely but was overwhelmed within hours. Evacuate the capital, Kilos ordered. His hands shook as he sent the command. All civilians to the underground shelters. Sir, his communications officer said quietly. The shelters won't hold. The swarm burrows. They'll reach everyone within days. Kalos closed his 4 eyes. 4 billion people lived on Vraxia Prime. His entire species numbered only 30 billion across all their worlds. This was extinction. In desperation, he activated the emergency broadcast system. Every ship, every station, every world in the galaxy would receive this message. This is Kalos of Vraxia Prime, grandson of the Council. We are dying. The swarm has reached our homeworld. Our defenses have failed. Within days, my species will cease to exist. His voice broke. To anyone who can hear this, to any species that values life, please, help us. We beg you. The message echoed across the galaxy. Most species heard it and felt despair. They were all losing this war. There was no help to give. But in human space, the Terran sovereignty military had been preparing for 3 weeks. 500 warships, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, sat at the edge of council space. Crews numbering in the millions waited for orders. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Redemption, named for the moment humanity hoped was coming. Around him, his command staff worked in practiced silence. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we've received the Vraxian distress call." "I heard it." Chen took a breath. 400 years ago, a Vraxian had condemned his species to death. Now a Vraxian begged for salvation. History was a circle sometimes. "Send the message. All ships, prepare for combat jump." "Sir, are you sure? Once we reveal ourselves, there's no going back." "I know." "Execute the order." 500 ships vanished from human space and reappeared over Vraxia Prime. The transition was so fast, so smooth, that the swarm had no warning. One moment the sky was filled with their vessels, the next it was filled with something else. The human ships were like nothing the swarm or the council had ever seen. Sleek, dark, covered in angles that seemed to absorb light. They moved with impossible grace, their dark matter engines pushing them faster than physics should allow. "All ships," Chen broadcast on all frequencies, making sure everyone could hear. "Engage the swarm. Show them what humanity has become." The phase weapons fired first, beams of concentrated dark matter that could punch through solid objects like they were air. Swarm ships exploded by the dozens. The phase shields activated, causing human vessels to flicker in and out of normal space, making them impossible to target. In the command center, Kalos and his staff stood frozen, watching screens that showed the impossible. The swarm fleet, which had destroyed his defenses in hours, was being systematically eliminated. The human ships moved like dancers, precise and deadly. Every shot hit. Every maneuver was perfect. "Who are they?" someone whispered. Within 4 hours, the swarm fleet was gone. The landing pods were being hunted down by human ground forces that appeared from nowhere, weapons unlike anything the Council possessed. The swarm parasites that had begun consuming the planet were being burned away by focused energy beams. Vraxia Prime was saved. Chen opened a channel to the planet. His face appeared on every screen in the Council Command Center and on screens across the galaxy that were monitoring the distress call. "This is Admiral James Chen of the Terran Sovereignty," he said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "We heard your call for help. We have eliminated the swarm forces in your system." Kalos found his voice. Who are you? Terran Sovereignty?" "That name is not in our databases." Chen smiled, but it was not entirely kind. "No, it wouldn't be. Your ancestors deleted us 400 years ago. We are humanity. The species you condemned to die in the Perseus Arm. The species you erased from history." He paused, letting that sink in. "We never forgot. We never forgave. But we also never stopped being human." The command center erupted in chaos. Human, impossible. Humanity was extinct. Everyone knew that. "You're lying," Kalos said. "Humanity died centuries ago. The Perseus Arm was barren. You couldn't have survived." "You were right that it was barren," Chen replied. "You were wrong that it would kill us. Humanity survives. We thrive, we build, and we remember everything." Another voice cut in, broadcasting across all council frequencies. Chancellor Alvarez appeared on the screens. "To all council species," she said. 400 years ago, you judged humanity as too dangerous to exist near you. You thought exile would destroy us. Instead, it freed us. No council oversight, no treaties limiting our research, no rules except those we made ourselves. You gave us exactly what we needed to become something greater than you imagined. We have been watching you for 2 centuries, she continued. We know every system, every world, every ship in council space. We could have returned at any time. We could have taken revenge. But we chose to wait. To grow. to become strong enough that when we returned, it would be as equals, not supplicants. The swarm threatens all life in this galaxy, Alvarez said. We will help you stop them. But understand this clearly. The old council, the one that condemned us, is finished. What comes next will be different. Humanity will have a voice, a seat, a vote. We are no longer the frightened species begging for acceptance. We are an empire, and we are offering you a choice. Stand with us or stand aside. Across the galaxy, 1,000 species heard the message. The ghosts of humanity had returned, and they had become something magnificent and terrible. The war against the swarm took 11 years. 11 years of brutal fighting across 1,000 star systems. But humanity had learned warfare in the hardest school imaginable, the school of survival. Every battle refined their tactics. Every loss taught them something new. The swarm fought with numbers and hunger. They consumed everything and reproduced endlessly. But humans fought with intelligence and technology. They studied the swarm, found weaknesses, and exploited them without mercy. The turning point came in the 3rd year, when human scientists discovered that swarm parasites could not infect humans. Something about human brain chemistry, evolved through 400 years of adapting to dark matter exposure, made them immune. Human soldiers could walk into infested zones without fear of corruption. We're the perfect counter to them, Admiral Chen said during a strategy meeting. While council species have to fight at a distance, we can engage them directly. The tide turned. System after system was retaken. The swarm, which had seemed unstoppable, began to falter. By the 8th year, they were in retreat. By the 11th, they were gone, driven back into the dark space between galaxies where they had come from. The cost was heavy. Billions dead, hundreds of worlds left scarred. But the galaxy survived, and everyone knew who had saved it. On New Terra, the capital of the Terran sovereignty, representatives from 200 council species gathered. The old council chamber had been destroyed when the swarm attacked the Citadel station. This new chamber was built on human soil, in a city that had risen from frozen wastes into gleaming towers. Kelos stood among the representatives, feeling small and old. His species had numbered 30 billion before the war. Now only 12 billion remained. Phraxia Prime was safe but scarred. Half the planet's surface would take generations to heal. We owe you our lives, Kelos said when the proceedings began. He spoke directly to Chancellor Alvarez, who sat at the center of the new chamber. Without human intervention, my species would be extinct. Most species here would be extinct. You owe us more than that, Senator Sharma said sharply. She had not forgotten the hardships her family endured. You owe us an apology, recognition, reparations for 400 years of exile. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some council species looked ashamed. Others looked defensive. Alvarez raised her hand for silence. We did not save you for payment. We saved you because it was right. Because letting innocents die to punish their ancestors is not who we are. She stood and her presence filled the room. But the senator is correct. What happened to humanity was wrong. It was born from fear and arrogance. The council thought they knew best. They thought limiting progress would bring peace. Instead, it made you weak. She gestured to the assembled representatives. The old council is dissolved as of today. It failed its people. It failed the galaxy. What comes next must be different. What do you propose? Asked the Sovar representative, his crystalline form chiming softly. A new compact, Alvarez said. The Galactic Compact. Not ruled by the oldest species or the largest populations, but led by merit, by innovation, by those who prove themselves capable. Humanity offers protection and technology sharing. In return, we ask for equal voice and the freedom to continue our research without artificial limitations. You could just take control, the Kellyan ambassador pointed out. Your military is stronger than all of ours combined. Who could stop you? We could, Alvarez agreed. But that is not who we choose to be. We offer partnership, not domination. Those who wish to join the compact are welcome. Those who wish to remain independent may do so. But understand that our protection extends only to those who stand with us. The vote took 3 days. In the end, 90% of council species joined the compact. The remaining 10% chose independence, and humanity respected that choice. Protection was offered if they changed their minds. The new government formed quickly. Representatives were chosen based on competence, not tradition. The old restrictions on technology research were lifted. Species that had been forbidden from certain advancements were suddenly free to explore. Human scientists shared knowledge freely, teaching others what they had learned in 4 centuries of unrestricted discovery. Not everyone was happy. Some species resented being protected by those they had once exiled. Some feared that humanity would eventually take over completely, but the majority saw hope for the first time in years. 3 years after the compact's formation, a ceremony was held on Unity Station, a massive structure built jointly by humans and their new allies. The station orbited New Terra, visible from the surface as a bright star in the evening sky. Kelos attended the ceremony, old now even by his species' standards. His bone plates had gone gray and he moved slowly, but he had lived to see his species survive, and that was enough. The ceremony honored Admiral Sarah Chen, who had died 250 years earlier. Her journals had been published, showing the galaxy what those first terrible years had been like. Many who read them wept. Maya Nakamura Chen, great-great-great-granddaughter of Ambassador Kenji Nakamura, and descended from the Chen line through marriage, stood before the assembled crowd. She had been elected as the first Chancellor of the Galactic Compact, a position that held real power but required accountability to all member species. 400 years ago, Maya said, her voice carrying across the station and broadcast to 1 trillion screens. The Council tried to end humanity. They thought exile was mercy. They thought we would fade away and be forgotten. She smiled. Instead, they created something they never intended. They forged us in fire and hardship. They removed all the chains that held us back. They gave us the one thing we needed most. What was that? Someone in the crowd called out. They gave us a reason to prove them wrong. Maya looked directly at Kelos, her eyes kind but firm. You tried to destroy us. Instead, you made us into your saviors. For that, we don't thank you, but we do forgive you. Kelos felt tears run down his face. Relief, shame, and gratitude mixed together. My ancestor, Ambassador Kenji Nakamura, said something in his final days. Maya continued. He said, make them remember us. We have. The galaxy will never forget humanity again, but we also remember his other words written in his private journals. He said, survive not to become them, but to show them what they could have been. That is our promise to the galaxy, Maya declared. We will be the protectors you needed. We will be the innovators who push boundaries. We will be the voice that asks difficult questions and refuses easy answers. We will be everything the old council feared we would be, but we will also be better than you feared, because we learned something in our exile. We learned that strength without compassion is tyranny, and we refused to become tyrants. The chamber erupted in applause. Not everyone clapped enthusiastically, but they all clapped. Later, Maya stood on an observation deck with Admiral Chen, who had become her chief military advisor and friend. They watched New Terra turning slowly below, its light spreading across continents that had once been frozen wastes. Do you think we can make this work? Chen asked. The compact. This new order. I don't know, Maya admitted. We're still human. We'll make mistakes. Some species will always resent us. There will be challenges we can't foresee. But we survived exile. We survived the dark years. We survived the swarm. If we can survive all that, we can survive peace, she smiled. Besides, we have something the old council never had. What's that? We remember what it's like to be weak, to be afraid, to be judged unfairly. That memory will keep us honest, keep us from becoming what they were. Far below, in the cities of New Terra, human children and alien children played together in parks that had been carved from impossible terrain. They learned each other's languages, shared each other's foods, and dreamed each other's dreams. In orbit, Terran warships maintained their eternal watch. Not as conquerors, but as guardians. The galaxy was safer than it had been in centuries, protected by the species that had been cast aside and forgotten, and in deep space, beyond the edge of explored territory, quantum probes detected something new, signals from other galaxies, evidence of human colonies that had escaped exile in the opposite direction 400 years ago, now returning home. Humanity's future was vast and unknowable. But one thing was certain. They would never be underestimated again. The species that had been banished and forgotten had built an empire that now ruled the galaxy. Not through conquest. Not through fear. But through something the old council had never truly understood. through the simple, stubborn, beautiful refusal to give up. The emergency signal cut through space like a scream in the dark. It traveled faster than light, bouncing off relay stations, piercing through the void between stars. The message was simple and desperate. Help us, please. We are dying. Ambassador Ceres stood in the council chamber of the Valthene Coalition and watched the holographic display with 3 of her hearts sinking. Another colony had gone silent. That made 12 in the last month. The Kralik swarm was moving faster than anyone had predicted. How many civilians were on Station Verath? Asked Council Member Pranir. His blue skin had gone pale. 40,000 souls, Ceres answered quietly. Families, children, scientists who never held a weapon in their lives. The council chamber fell silent. Through the tall windows, Ceres could see the capital city of Valth Prime stretching toward the horizon. Peaceful, beautiful, doomed if they did nothing. The Kraliks had appeared at their borders 6 months ago with a simple message: submit or die. The Valthene Coalition had tried diplomacy. They sent ambassadors with gifts and offers of trade. The Kraliks sent back pieces of the ambassadors in cargo containers. They tried establishing neutral zones and peace talks. The Kraliks used the ceasefires to reposition their fleets and attack from new angles. The Valthene were not warriors. Their civilization had abandoned warfare 3,000 years ago, after a devastating civil war nearly destroyed their homeworld. Since then, they had built a society based on art, science, and philosophy. They had welcomed 6 other species into their coalition, all of them sharing the same peaceful values. Together, they had created something beautiful. The Kraliks were destroying it piece by piece. We must surrender, said Councillor Vesh. We can negotiate terms. Surely they will allow some degree of autonomy. They won't, Ceres said firmly. She had studied the Kraliks extensively over the past months. They don't negotiate. They conquer. They'll strip our worlds of resources, enslave our people, and move on to the next target. Then what do you suggest? Pren demanded. We have no military. Our defense fleet consists of patrol ships designed to chase smugglers, not fight a war. Ceres took a deep breath. We send the distress call to every known civilization in the galaxy. Someone must be willing to help. The council debated for hours. Some argued that asking for outside help would compromise their sovereignty. Others insisted that pride meant nothing if they were all dead. Finally, as the twin suns of Valth Prime set beyond the horizon, they voted. The motion passed. Ceres worked through the night crafting the message. It had to be perfect. She described the Kraliks' aggression in detail. She explained the humanitarian crisis, the refugee camps overflowing with displaced civilians, the children orphaned by the attacks. She emphasized the need for mediation, peacekeeping forces, and diplomatic intervention. The message went out to 47 different civilizations across known space. Most didn't respond. A few sent messages of sympathy but claimed they couldn't spare resources. 3 species sent medical supplies which helped but wouldn't stop plasma cannons. Then Earth responded. Ceres didn't know much about humans. They were a relatively young species that had only achieved faster than light travel 200 years ago. Their planet was small and unremarkable, located in a quiet arm of the galaxy, but they had expanded rapidly, establishing colonies and trade routes with impressive efficiency. She pulled up the human files in the Coalition database. The information was limited. Earth had experienced something called world wars in their past. They had nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons at one point. Since reaching the stars, they had been involved in several peacekeeping operations and conflict resolutions with various aggressive species. That last part gave Ceres hope. Humans knew how to handle aggressors. They could mediate. They could establish peace. The human response came within 24 hours. It was brief. Received your distress call. United Earth Fleet dispatching task force to your location. ETA 14 days. Hold position. Help is coming. The council chamber erupted in relief when Ceres shared the news. Finally, someone was coming. Someone who understood conflicts and knew how to resolve them. The humans would surely bring negotiators, mediators, perhaps a defensive fleet to protect them while peace talks commenced. How many ships are they sending? Asked Councillor Vesh. Ceres checked the transmission data. 47 vessels according to their fleet manifest. 47. That's more than our entire defense force, Prin said excitedly. Surely the Kraliks will agree to negotiate when they see such a show of force. Ceres nodded. though something nagged at the back of her mind. The human message had been strangely cold. No sympathetic words, no promises of diplomatic solutions, just a statement of fact. We are coming. Over the next 2 weeks, the Kralix tightened their grip. 3 more colonies fell. Refugee ships fled toward Valth Prime, overloading the planet's infrastructure. The defense fleet managed to evacuate most civilians before the Kralix arrived, but they lost 2 ships in the process. Good vessels crewed by good people who wanted nothing more than to protect innocents. Cirrus barely slept. She coordinated relief efforts, managed supply distribution, and tried to keep hope alive among the coalition species. She also studied everything she could find about humans. The more she read, the more uneasy she became. Human history was soaked in blood. They had fought wars for thousands of years. Religion, resources, territory, ideology, it didn't seem to matter. They found reasons to kill each other with disturbing regularity. Even after achieving space travel, they had engaged in several military actions against hostile species. But they had also negotiated peace treaties. They had established the United Earth government after centuries of conflict. They had moved beyond their violent past, or so it seemed. Surely they would bring that experience to the Valthine situation. On the morning of the 14th day, Sarah stood in the observation center watching the long-range sensors. The Kralix were assembling a massive fleet at the edge of the system. Intelligence suggested they were preparing for a final assault on Valth Prime itself. After this, the coalition would cease to exist. Then the sensors lit up with new contacts. 47 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the outer system boundary. Cirrus felt relief flood through her. They had arrived. The humans were here. But as the sensor data refined and the ship classifications came through, her relief turned to confusion. These weren't medical vessels or diplomatic transports. Every single ship was a warship. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and 3 massive battleships that bristled with weapons. Why would they bring a war fleet to a peacekeeping mission? Pren whispered beside her. Sarris didn't have an answer. She watched as the human fleet moved into formation with military precision. They didn't slow down. They didn't hail the coalition asking for diplomatic briefings. They simply advanced toward Valth Prime at combat speed. A transmission came through on the priority channel. A human face appeared on the screen. He was older, with gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too much. His uniform was crisp and decorated with symbols that Sarris assumed were military honors. This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Transmit current tactical data on hostile forces, not enemy positions for negotiation. Hostile forces, tactical data, the language of war, not peace. Sarris felt her 3 hearts beating faster. She had asked for help. The humans had answered, but looking at that fleet, at those weapons, at that admiral's cold expression, she suddenly wondered what kind of help was actually coming. Thank you, Admiral, she managed to say. We're transmitting all data now. When can we begin diplomatic outreach to the Kralix? Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Ambassador, we tried contacting them on our way in. They told us to leave your system or be destroyed. And what did you respond? Sarris asked, though part of her already knew. The Admiral smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We told them we'll see them soon. The transmission ended. Sarris stared at the blank screen, then back at the sensor display showing the human fleet. 47 warships loaded with enough firepower to crack a planet. She had called for help. She had expected diplomats and mediators. Instead, humanity had sent its warriors. The human flagship was nothing like Sarris had imagined. She had visited coalition military vessels before, back when they still maintained a token defense force. Those ships had been clean and bright, with art displays in the corridors and meditation chambers for crew wellness. The ships felt more like flying universities than instruments of war. Admiral Chen's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, was different. The shuttle bay where Sarris landed was purely functional. Gray metal walls, harsh lighting. The deck crew moved with practiced efficiency, wearing armor even inside the ship. Every person she saw carried a sidearm. Through an open maintenance hatch, she glimpsed what looked like missile racks. A young human woman met her at the shuttle ramp. She wore a dark uniform with lieutenant's insignia and had a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ambassador Sarris, welcome aboard. I'm Lieutenant Park. The Admiral is waiting for you in the command center. This way, please. Saris followed her through corridors that hummed with barely contained energy. She passed crew members who nodded respectfully but never stopped working. Through doorways, she saw armories stocked with rifles and heavier weapons. One room was filled entirely with sealed containers marked with symbols she didn't recognize, but that made her skin crawl. "Are those what I think they are?" she asked, stopping to look. Lieutenant Park glanced at the containers. "Nuclear warheads, ma'am. We have about 300 aboard. Standard load for a battleship." 300, Saris repeated weakly. The Coalition had banned nuclear technology after their civil war. The very idea of having that many devastating weapons on a single ship was horrifying. "Don't worry, Ambassador. We know how to use them safely," Park said, as if that was somehow comforting. The command center was vast and filled with stations where crew members monitored everything from weapons systems to engine status. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the system. The Kralix fleet at the edge, the human fleet between them and Valth Prime, the Coalition's pathetic handful of patrol ships hiding behind the human formation. Admiral Chen stood at the center of it all, studying the tactical display with 3 other senior officers. He looked up as Saris entered and dismissed the others with a gesture. "Ambassador Saris, thank you for coming aboard." His voice was rough, like gravel grinding together. "Admiral Chen, thank you for responding to our distress call." Saris tried to keep her voice steady. "We're desperate for your help in establishing a peaceful resolution to this conflict." Chen's expression didn't change. "Walk with me, Ambassador." He led her to a private observation room overlooking the planet below. Valth Prime turned slowly beneath them, beautiful and fragile. Chen poured 2 glasses of something amber from a bottle and offered her one. She declined. Humans drank alcohol recreationally, which seemed like poor judgment for a military commander, but she kept that thought to herself. "Let me be direct, Ambassador," Chen said, taking a sip of his drink. "What exactly were you expecting when you sent that distress call?" We expected help," Saris said carefully. "Diplomatic assistance, perhaps a protective fleet while we negotiated with the Kralix. Mediation from a neutral party." "You expected us to talk them into leaving you alone," Chen said flatly. "Yes. Isn't that how civilized species resolve disputes?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up a file on his tablet and handed it to her. "This is the communication log from our first contact with the Kralix. We sent it 3 days ago as we entered your sector." Saris read the message. It was professional and diplomatic. The humans identified themselves, stated their intention to provide humanitarian assistance to the Valthine Coalition, and requested the Kralix withdraw from Coalition space to allow for peace negotiations. The Kralix response was brief. "Leave or die. There is nothing to negotiate. These worlds are ours now." The humans had sent a second message asking for at least a ceasefire to evacuate civilians. The Kralix hadn't bothered to respond to that one. "They won't negotiate," Chen said quietly. "We've seen species like this before. The only thing they understand is force." "But there must be a diplomatic solution," Saris insisted. "Every conflict can be resolved through dialogue if both parties have to want dialogue," Chen interrupted. "The Kralix don't. They want your worlds. They want your resources. They want your people as slaves or corpses. Which do you prefer?" The bluntness shocked her. You can't just assume violence is the only answer." Chen took another sip of his drink. "Tell me, Ambassador, before you sent out that distress call, how many times did you try talking to the Kralix?" "Dozens of times. We sent ambassadors, we offered trade agreements. We suggested neutral territory for peace talks. And they killed your ambassadors. Ignored your offers and used your ceasefires to reposition their forces," Chen finished. "How many of your people have died while you tried to talk?" Saris felt anger flash through her. "Over 200,000. But that doesn't mean we should abandon our principles. Violence only creates more violence." "You're right," Chen said, surprising her. "Violence does create more violence. That's why we need to make sure the Kralix understand that attacking the Valthine Coalition will result in so much violence directed at them that they never want to try it again." "That's barbaric," Saris whispered. "That's effective." Chen pulled up another display. "This is our battle plan. We're going to position the fleet here, here, and here. When the Kralix fleet advances, we'll hit them with long-range missiles first. That should reduce their numbers by 20% before they can return fire. Then we'll close to weapons range and engage directly. Saris stared at the plan in horror. The human formation was designed to maximize casualties. They weren't planning to defend. They were planning to attack. To kill. This is genocide, she said. You're talking about wiping out their fleet. I'm talking about stopping them from wiping out your civilization, Chen corrected. Every Kralik ship we destroy is a ship that can't bomb your colonies or enslave your people. Every Kralik soldier who dies here is one who won't kill your children. We didn't ask for this, Saris said desperately. We asked for help, not massacre. Chen's expression hardened. You asked for help. This is what help looks like when talking has failed. You called Earth because you knew we've dealt with aggressive species before. You read our history. You saw that we resolve conflicts. Did you not wonder how? I assumed, Saris struggled to find words. You've established peace treaties. You have the United Earth government. You've moved beyond your violent past. We established peace by making war so terrible that everyone agreed to stop, Chen said quietly. The United Earth government exists because every nation on our planet saw what nuclear weapons could do and decided that cooperation was better than extinction. We moved beyond our violent past by learning how to direct that violence at threats instead of each other. He turned back to the tactical display. In 6 hours, the Kralix fleet will be in range. They'll advance on Valth Prime and finish what they started, unless we stop them. By killing them all, Saris said numbly. By hurting them so badly that they never come back, Chen replied. Ambassador, I understand this isn't what you wanted. You wanted a peaceful solution. I wish I could give you that. But the Kralix made their choice when they rejected every attempt at diplomacy. When they killed your ambassadors. When they murdered 200,000 of your civilians, they chose this. And what gives you the right to choose death for them? Saris demanded. Chen looked at her with those hard, tired eyes. You did. When you sent that distress call. When you asked for help. You gave us the right to defend you using the methods we know work. You just didn't ask what those methods were. A warning tone sounded through the ship. Lieutenant Park's voice came over the intercom. Admiral, sensors detect the Kralix fleet beginning their advance. They're moving toward Valth Prime at attack speed. Chen moved to the window and looked out at the distant specks of light that were enemy ships. This is your last chance, Ambassador. You can ask us to stand down. We'll withdraw our fleet and leave you to negotiate with the Kralix on your own terms. Or you can let us do what we came here to do. Saris looked down at her homeworld. She thought of the 200,000 dead. The millions more who would die if the Kralix weren't stopped. She thought of children in refugee camps, families torn apart, entire colonies reduced to rubble and ash. She thought of her principles. The values that had defined Valthine civilization for 3,000 years. Peace, diplomacy, the sanctity of life. Then she thought of what would happen to all of that if the Kralix won. Do what you have to do, she whispered. Save my people. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. We will. But Ambassador, I want you to understand something. After today, you won't be able to pretend anymore. You'll know exactly what it takes to survive in a hostile galaxy. You'll know what we are, what we've always been. He pressed a button on his console. Throughout the ship, Saris heard klaxons begin to wail. The crew moved with controlled urgency to their battle stations. All hands, this is the Admiral. Chen's voice echoed through the ship. General quarters. Battle formation. Weapons free. Show them what happens when they threaten our friends. Saris watched the tactical display as the human fleet surged forward to meet the Kralix. She had asked for help. She was at the Battle of Valth Prime began with mathematics. Saris watched from the observation deck of the Vengeful Spirit as Admiral Chen calmly called out distances, velocities, and firing solutions. The command center had transformed from a busy workspace into something that looked like controlled chaos. But every person knew exactly what they were doing. Kralix fleet at 400,000 kilometers and closing, reported a sensor officer. Count is 137 vessels. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, and fighter carriers. They outnumber us almost 3-1, Lieutenant Park noted quietly beside Saris. Doesn't matter, Chen replied, his voice steady. Lieutenant Morrison, status on missile batteries? All tubes loaded and ready, sir. We have firing solutions on their lead elements. Fire when ready. The ship barely trembled as the first wave of missiles launched. Through the observation window, Saris saw dozens of small lights streak away from the human fleet. Hundreds of missiles, moving faster than anything the Valthine had ever built. The tactical display tracked them as they covered the distance to the Kralix fleet in seconds. The Kralix had point defense systems. Saris watched as they shot down many of the incoming missiles, but not all of them. Not nearly enough. Explosions blossomed in the darkness of space, silent, beautiful, deadly. When the light faded, 17 Kralix ships had been destroyed or crippled. 17 ships eliminated before the battle had truly begun. Second wave fire, Chen ordered. More missiles launched. The Kralix were ready this time, their point defense working overtime. They shot down more missiles, but again, not all. Another 12 ships took critical damage. The Kralix formation wavered but continued forward. "They're not running," Saris said, surprised. "They're committed," Chen replied. "They see us as just another obstacle. They'll learn." The Kralix fleet opened fire. Their plasma weapons lit up space with green and yellow energy. The beams crossed the distance between fleets in seconds. Saris gripped the railing as the first shot struck the human ships. The shielding absorbed most of it, but not all. One human destroyer took a direct hit that punched through its armor. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship listed but kept moving, kept fighting. "Damage report on the Resolute," Chen demanded. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 6. They're sealing it now. Weapons systems still operational." Chen nodded as if this was expected, as if losing a portion of a ship and everyone on those decks was just part of the plan. Saris felt sick. "All ships close to engagement range. Fighter wings, you are cleared for launch." The human carriers opened their bays. Hundreds of small craft poured out, moving in formations that looked like schools of predatory fish. They streaked toward the Kralix fleet while the larger ships followed at attack speed. The Kralix launched their own fighters. The space between the two fleets became a chaotic mess of dogfights, explosions, and debris. Saris couldn't follow it all. The tactical display was too cluttered, too fast, too violent. What shocked her most was the human tactics. Valthene doctrine, back when they still had military doctrine focused on preservation. Protect your ships, minimize casualties, fight defensively and withdraw if losses became too heavy. Humans fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove. She watched a human destroyer, with critical damage, deliberately ram itself into a Kralix cruiser. Both ships exploded in a fusion reaction that lit up space like a newborn star. The human captain had sacrificed his entire crew to take out an enemy vessel. "Did that commander just commit suicide?" she asked, horrified. "Captain Rodriguez knew his ship was done," Lieutenant Park explained. "Life support was failing. Rather than let his crew die slowly, he took an enemy ship with him. They'll get full honors when we get home." "That's insane," Saris whispered. "That's duty," Park corrected gently. The main fleets collided. At this range, the weapons became even more brutal. Railguns fired slugs of metal at relativistic speeds. Missiles with nuclear warheads detonated in close proximity. Energy weapons carved through hulls like knives through flesh. The Kralix were good. Saris had to admit that. They were experienced warriors who had conquered dozens of species. They fought with skill and ferocity, but the humans fought like devils. A Kralix dreadnought disabled a human cruiser with a devastating broadside. Before the Kralix could finish it off, 2 human destroyers moved to protect their wounded comrade. They positioned themselves directly between the enemy dreadnought and the damaged cruiser. Taking fire meant for their fellow ship. Both destroyers were destroyed. The cruiser survived. "Why?" Saris asked. "Why sacrifice 2 ships to save one?" "Because those are our people," Chen replied without looking away from the display. "We don't leave anyone behind." Another Kralix ship, this one a carrier, tried to flank the human formation. Admiral Chen dispatched a single battleship to intercept it. Saris watched as the battleship, the Indomitable, charged directly at the carrier despite being outnumbered by the carrier's escorts. The Indomitable took horrific damage. Its shields failed. Its armor was breached in multiple places. Fires burned in its interior, but it kept moving forward, its weapons never stopping. When it reached the Kralix carrier, the Indomitable opened up with everything it had at point-blank range. The carrier's shields collapsed under the assault. Its hull split open. Secondary explosions rippled through its structure. The carrier tried to retreat, but the Indomitable followed like a predator chasing wounded prey. Even as the battleship lost atmosphere, even as systems failed, it kept firing. The carrier tried to escape into faster-than-light travel. The Indomitable's final action was to fire its remaining missiles directly into the carrier's jump engines. Both Ships vanished in an explosion that registered on sensors. Across the entire star system, all hands on the Indomitable are lost, a communications officer reported quietly. The command center fell, silent for exactly 3 seconds. Noted in the log, Chen said. They bought us the flank. Continue the attack, Sarah stared at him. You're not even going to acknowledge that over 1,000 people just died? I'll mourn them when the battle is over, Chen replied coldly. Right now I need to make sure they didn't die for nothing. The battle raged for 2 more hours. The space around Valth Prime became a graveyard of broken ships and frozen corpses. The Kralix fought hard, but the humans fought harder. Every time the Kralix adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach. Every time the Kralix tried to gain an advantage, the humans countered with something unexpected and usually violent. The Kralix tried to use their biological weapons, releasing clouds of engineered viruses meant to infiltrate human ships through ventilation systems. The humans sealed their ships and vented the atmosphere in affected sections. Then they returned fire with their own bioweapons, strains specifically designed to target Kralix physiology. You developed weapons specifically to kill them? Saris asked in horror. We developed countermeasures based on their biology, Park corrected. Once they used bioweapons, they gave us permission to respond in kind. That's not how war should work, Saris protested. War doesn't work according to anyone's rules except survival, Chen said. They chose to escalate. We're better at escalation than they are. The tide turned slowly but inevitably. The Kralix fleet, which had started at 137 ships, dwindled to less than 70. Then 50, then 30. The human fleet, which began at 47 ships, was down to 31 operational vessels and another 8 damaged but still fighting. The casualties were terrible on both sides, but the Kralix were losing faster. Finally, the Kralix commander sent a transmission. It appeared on the main display, a reptilian face with multiple eyes and sharp teeth. The alien looked shocked, angry, afraid. We withdraw, the Kralix commander hissed. You have won this engagement. We will leave coalition space. No, Admiral Chen replied simply. The Kralix commander's eyes widened. We are offering terms of withdrawal. This is customary among warrior species. You should have thought about that before you killed 200,000 Valthian civilians, Chen said coldly. Before you rejected every diplomatic offer. Before you told us to leave or die. We don't accept your withdrawal. We accept only your surrender. We do not surrender. We will regroup and return with greater force. No, you won't. Chen gestured to his weapons officer. Target their engines. All remaining ships. Disable them. Sir, they're trying to retreat, the weapons officer said, seeking confirmation. I know. Disable them anyway. The human fleet opened fire on the retreating Kralix vessels. They targeted propulsion systems specifically, leaving the ships crippled and drifting. The Kralix fired back desperately, but they were broken and scattered. Within an hour, every surviving Kralix ship was disabled and helpless. Saris watched the tactical display in stunned silence. The battle was over. The Kralix fleet was destroyed. Valth Prime was saved. But the cost was written in the debris field that now orbited her homeworld. Human ships drifted, their crews dead. Thousands of fighters had been destroyed. An entire battleship had sacrificed itself. And the Kralix ships sat disabled in space, their crews trapped and helpless. What happens to them now? Saris asked quietly. Admiral Chen stood looking. 3 days after the battle, Sarah stood in her office watching the news feeds with growing unease. The Valthian people were celebrating. Streets filled with crowds cheering the human victory. Banners and displays showed Admiral Chen's face alongside messages of gratitude. Children waved human flags they had made from cloth and imagination. Her people were grateful. They should be. The humans had saved them from extinction. But Saris couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The human fleet hadn't left. More ships kept arriving through faster than light jumps. Supply vessels, troop transports, intelligence ships. Instead of 47 warships, there were now over 70 human vessels in coalition space, and they were hunting. Counselor Pren entered her office without knocking, his blue skin flushed dark with anger. Have you seen the latest reports? Which ones? Saris asked tiredly. She hadn't slept properly in days. The humans pursued 3 Kralix ships that escaped the battle. They tracked them back to a supply depot in neutral space and destroyed it. Completely. Every ship, every station, every installation. Saris felt cold. That's beyond coalition borders. Beyond our jurisdiction. Exactly. They didn't ask permission. They didn't inform us. They just went and destroyed it. Pren pulled up images on his tablet. The supply depot had been a major installation. Now it was debris and frozen corpses floating in space. There's more, Pren continued. Human intelligence vessels have been scanning Kralix communications. They've identified the locations of military bases, supply lines, and command centers deep inside Kralix territory, and Admiral Chen is planning to strike them. That's not defense, Saris said quietly. That's invasion. That's revenge, Pren corrected bitterly. The humans aren't satisfied with just defeating the fleet that attacked us. They want to cripple the entire Kralix Empire. Saris contacted the vengeful spirit immediately. She needed to talk to Admiral Chen, to understand what was happening, to stop this before it went too far. Chen received her in the same observation room where they had talked before the battle. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, but his expression remained as hard as ever. Ambassador Saris, what can I do for you? You can explain why human forces are attacking targets outside coalition space without authorization, Saris said, her voice sharp. You can explain why you're invading Kralix territory when we only asked you to defend our worlds. Chen poured himself a drink. The same amber liquid from before. He didn't offer her any this time. We're neutralizing future threats. You're escalating a conflict that we wanted to end, Saris countered. The Kralix fleet is destroyed. Our worlds are safe. Why continue fighting? Because the threat isn't eliminated, Chen said patiently, as if explaining something obvious to a child. We destroyed one fleet. The Kralix Empire has dozens more. If we stop now, they'll regroup and come back in a year or 5 years or 10 years. And next time, humans might not be around to help. So you're taking it upon yourself to decide the fate of an entire empire? Saris demanded. We didn't ask for this. We didn't authorize this. You asked us to save you, Chen replied. That's what we're doing. But we're not going to do a half job. We're going to make sure the Kralix never threaten you again. That requires destroying their ability to wage war. It requires genocide, Saris said, the word bitter on her tongue. Chen's eyes flashed with anger for the first time. Genocide is what the Kralix were planning for you. We're engaging military targets only. Command centers, shipyards, military bases. We're not bombing civilian populations or enslaving their people. That's what they did to you. The difference is just a matter of degree, Saris insisted. No, Ambassador. The difference is everything. Chen set down his drink. Let me tell you about Earth's history. About the wars we fought. We've committed atrocities. We've done terrible things to each other. We know what true genocide looks like because we've done it. We've also learned from those mistakes. We've established rules of warfare. Protections for civilians. Laws about acceptable targets. He pulled up tactical displays showing the human operations. Every target we've hit has been military. Every strike has been measured to minimize collateral damage. We're dismantling their war machine, not their civilization. You're still making that decision for them, Saris argued. For us, for everyone. Someone has to, Chen said quietly. The Kralix made their choice when they attacked you. They demonstrated what they are, a threat, and threats need to be eliminated before they can harm anyone else. And what makes you the judge of who is a threat? Saris demanded. What gives humans the authority to decide which civilizations live and which die? Chen looked at her for a long moment. The fact that we're willing to do it. The fact that we can do it. And the fact that you called us when you needed someone who could. He walked to the window overlooking space. In the distance, Saris could see Valth Prime turning peacefully. Safe because of human violence. Protected because of human brutality. Let me ask you something, Ambassador, Chen said. What would you have done if we hadn't come? If your distress call had gone unanswered? We would have found another way, Saris said. But her voice lacked conviction. No, you wouldn't have. The Kralix would have conquered your worlds, enslaved your people, and moved on to the next target. Your civilization would have ended. Your culture would have been destroyed. Everything you value would have been lost. At least our principles would have remained intact, Saris said. Chen laughed. It was a harsh sound. Principles don't mean anything if you're dead. The Kralix don't care about your values. They don't respect your pacifism. They see it as weakness to be exploited. He turned back to face her. You want to know the ugly truth, Ambassador? Peace only exists because someone is willing to defend it. Someone has to be willing to do violence so that others can live without violence. That's what humans are. We're the ones who get our hands bloody so yours can stay clean. I never asked for that, Cirrus whispered. Yes, you did. When you sent that distress call. When you asked for help. You asked us to solve your problem. You just didn't want to know how we solve problems. A communication came through on Chen's tablet. He glanced at it and nodded. We've located the Kralix High Command. It's a space station in their home system. We're preparing to strike it. You can't, Sarah said desperately. That's their government. Their leadership. Destroying it would throw their entire empire into chaos. That's the point, Chen said calmly. Chaos means they can't organize another attack. Chaos means they'll be too busy fighting among themselves to threaten anyone else. Chaos gives you time to rebuild and strengthen your defenses so you never need to call for help again. People will die, Sarah said. Innocent people who had nothing to do with the attacks on coalition space. Probably, Chen admitted. War is imperfect. We'll do our best to minimize civilian casualties, but there will be collateral damage. There always is. But those deaths will prevent the deaths of millions of your people in future attacks. How can you live with that? Cirrus asked. How can you make those calculations? Decide whose lives matter more? Chen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, sadder. We live with it because someone has to. Because the alternative is worse. Because if we don't make those hard choices, civilizations like yours disappear. He pulled up more displays. After we strike the High Command, we're going to hit their major shipyards. There are 3 of them. They produce the warships used to conquer other species. Without those shipyards, the Kralix ability to wage offensive war drops by about 70%. You've already planned all of this, Sarris realized. Before we even asked. You came here knowing you would do this. We came here knowing we would do whatever was necessary to protect you, Chen corrected. This is necessary. We've seen empires like the Kralix before. If you don't break them completely, they come back stronger. And what if you're wrong? Cirrus challenged. What if this just makes them more desperate? More angry? What if they come back in 20 years with even more fury? Then we'll be here again, Chen said simply. And we'll stop them again. As many times as it takes for them to learn that some species are off limits. Sarris felt tears forming in her eyes. 3 of them. Her species cried with 3 tears, 1 from each eyelid. We just wanted peace. We just wanted to be left alone. I know, Chen said, and for the first time she heard genuine sympathy in his voice. But wanting peace isn't enough. You need the strength to defend it. You need the will to fight for it. Or you need allies who have that strength and will. He gestured to the human fleet visible through the observation window. This is what it costs, Ambassador. This is what survival looks like in a hostile galaxy. It's ugly. It's brutal. It's unfair. But it works. At what price? Cirrus asked. Whatever the price is, it's less than extinction, Chen replied. Over the next week, the human campaign against the Kralix Empire unfolded with ruthless efficiency. They struck the High Command Station, killing most of the Kralix leadership. They destroyed 2 of the 3 major shipyards. They crippled supply lines and disrupted communications networks. The Kralix Empire, which had seemed so powerful and unstoppable, fractured. Regional commanders fought among themselves for control. Border territories declared independence. Client species that had been subjugated by the Kralix saw an opportunity. 4 weeks after the battle, the human fleet prepared to depart. The celebration parades had ended. The memorials for the fallen had been completed. The Kralix Empire was shattered and no longer a threat. It was time for the humans to go home. Sarah stood at the spaceport watching the last shuttle loads of human personnel board their transports. The soldiers and crew members moved with the same efficient precision they had shown during the battle. No wasted motion. No unnecessary conversation. They completed their tasks and departed. They were professionals, Sarah had to admit. Terrifying professionals who had saved her people through methods that still gave her nightmares. The galactic news networks had been covering the Kralix situation extensively. Other civilizations were taking notice. Some praised the humans as heroes and protectors. Others expressed concern about humanity's willingness to use overwhelming force. A few species had quietly begun diplomatic overtures to Earth, seeking defense pacts and military alliances. Humanity's reputation had changed overnight. They were no longer seen as just another spacefaring species trying to find their place in the galaxy. They were now recognized as something dangerous, something powerful, something that could break empires if provoked. Counselor Pren joined Saris at the observation deck overlooking the landing pads. The Council wants to offer the humans a formal defense treaty. Military cooperation in exchange for protection. We're buying security with someone else's violence, Saris said quietly. We're accepting reality, Pren corrected. The galaxy isn't the peaceful place we pretended it was. Species like the Kralix exist, and we can't defend ourselves against them. So we hire humans to do our fighting for us, Saris said bitterly. Is that so different from what we already did? Pren asked. We called them when we needed help. Now we're just making it official. Saris didn't have a good answer to that. She had made the choice to accept human help. She had given Admiral Chen permission to save her people using his methods. She couldn't pretend now that she bore no responsibility for what followed. A message came through on her communicator. Admiral Chen wanted to meet with her one last time before the fleet departed. Saris took a shuttle up to the Vengeful Spirit, making the journey she had made several times over the past weeks. The ship felt different now, less intimidating. She understood it better, understood what it represented. Chen received her in his office rather than the observation room. The space was smaller, more personal. Pictures of Earth decorated one wall. His family, Saris realized. A woman and 2 children smiling at the camera. Another image showed a younger Chen in military uniform standing with a group of soldiers, all of them grinning despite visible combat damage to their surroundings. My wife and kids, Chen said, noticing her looking at the pictures. And my unit from the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago. Half of them are dead now. I'm sorry, Saris said automatically. Don't be. They died doing what they believed in, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. He gestured to a chair. Sit, please. I wanted to talk before we left. Saris sat down, suddenly feeling very tired. I suppose you want me to thank you again? Actually, I wanted to apologize. That surprised her. For what? Chen leaned back in his chair. For not being what you expected. For not solving your problem the way you wanted it solved. For forcing you to confront some ugly truths about the galaxy. You saved my people, Saris said. That's what matters, is it? Chen asked. You don't look like someone whose people were saved. You look like someone whose worldview was shattered. Saris felt those 3 tears forming again. We built our entire civilization on the principle that violence is never the answer. That peace can always be achieved through dialogue and understanding. And then you came and proved that sometimes violence is the only answer. Not the only answer, Chen said gently. The last answer. Violence should always be the last resort after everything else has failed. But when it is the last resort, you can't hesitate. You can't use half measures. You have to be willing to do what's necessary. How do you know when everything else has failed? Saris asked. When do you decide it's time to stop talking and start killing? Chen was quiet for a moment. That's the hardest question any civilization faces. For us, the answer came from bitter experience. We tried appeasement. We tried ignoring threats. We tried believing that everyone wanted peace as much as we did. And we learned through blood and fire that some beings only respect force. He pulled up a file on his tablet. This is a report from our xenopsychology team. They studied the Kralix extensively during our campaign. Do you know what they found? Saris shook her head. The Kralix literally cannot comprehend pacifism. Their brain structure, their cultural evolution, their entire society is built around dominance hierarchies, maintained through violence. When you sent ambassadors offering peace, they interpreted it as submission. When you established ceasefires, they saw weakness. Every diplomatic gesture you made reinforced their belief that you were prey. So we were doomed from the start. Saris said, quietly. No. You were doomed if you insisted on using only diplomacy against an enemy that couldn't understand it. But you weren't doomed if you were willing to fight, or willing to call someone who could fight for you. Chen closed the file. Ambassador, I want you to understand something. We didn't enjoy this. Destroying that fleet, crippling their empire, all of it. We're not bloodthirsty monsters who love war. Most of us hate it. But we're good at it because we've had to be. That's what frightens me, Saris admitted. You're so good at violence. So efficient at killing. What happens when you decide someone else is a threat? Then we have the same conversation we had with the Kralix, Chen said. We try talking first. We offer diplomatic solutions. We give every opportunity for peaceful resolution. And only if all of that fails do we resort to force. And who decides when it's failed? Cirrus pressed. You? Your government? What if you're wrong? Chen's expression grew somber. We might be. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But I can tell you this. Every human who serves in the military, every person who makes these decisions, they carry the weight of those choices. We don't take it lightly. We don't forget the people who die because of our actions. He gestured to the pictures on his wall. Those soldiers I served with. We still meet once a year. Those of us who survived. We talk about the people we lost. The decisions we made. Whether there was a better way. It never gets easier. We just learn to live with it. How? Cirrus asked. How do you live with the weight of all those deaths? By remembering why we fought, Chen said simply. By knowing that the alternative would have been worse. By believing that protecting innocent lives justifies the methods we used. He stood and walked to the window. Valth Prime turned below, peaceful and whole. Your planet is still there, Ambassador. Your people are alive. Your children have a future. That's because we were willing to do what you couldn't. And yes, we used violence. Yes, we killed. But the alternative was letting the Kralix exterminate your entire civilization. Can you honestly tell me that would have been better? Cirrus joined him at the window. No, I can't, and that's what keeps me awake at night. The fact that you were right. That violence was necessary. That all our principles and values meant nothing against someone who wanted to destroy us. Your principles still matter, Chen said. They're why we came. They're why we fought. A universe where civilizations like yours can exist and thrive. That's worth protecting. We don't want every species to become like us. We don't want everyone to embrace violence and warfare. We want species like yours to maintain your values, your pacifism, your dedication to peace. We just want you to understand that someone needs to guard those values from those who would destroy them. Is that how you see yourselves? Cirrus asked. As guardians? More like guard dogs, Chen said with a slight smile. We're not pretty. We're not nice. We're dangerous and we make people uncomfortable. But when the wolves come, you're glad to have us around. A communication alert sounded. The fleet was ready to depart. Chen straightened his uniform and picked up his tablet. I have something for you before I go, he said, handing her a data chip. This contains detailed information on defensive strategies, military organization, and training protocols. If you decide you want to build your own defense force, this will help. If you decide to stay pacifist and rely on allies, that's fine too. But you should make that choice knowing all your options. Cirrus took the chip, feeling its weight in her hand. Are you trying to turn us into warriors? I'm trying to give you choices, Chen replied. Knowledge is never wasted. What you do with it is up to you. They walked together to the shuttle bay. The last of the human personnel had boarded. Only Chen remained. What happens now? Cirrus asked. Do you just go home and wait for the next crisis? More or less, Chen said. We'll keep monitoring the region. If the Kralix try to rebuild their military and threaten you again, we'll be back. If another aggressive species shows up, call us. We'll come. Just like that? Cirrus asked. You'll drop everything.